Why you feel empty after spiritual awakening. Somewhere in your journey, maybe it was a single night, or maybe it was a slow unraveling across years, you saw through the illusion. The illusion of chasing, proving, achieving. Something broke inside, not loudly, quietly, the kind of break that feels like a whisper more than a scream. At first, that whisper felt divine, peaceful. You had escaped the noise of performance, of pretending, of playing roles that never truly fit. You thought, this must be it, awakening, liberation. But then something strange happened. You didn't feel free, you felt empty. You stopped chasing, but you also stopped creating. You stopped striving, but also stopped caring. This is the part no one tells you about awakening. The part Carl Jung understood long before it became a spiritual trend. He called it a sacred descent, the death of the ego, not as a dramatic fall, but as a slow, sacred dismantling of everything false. Part 1. The awakening that hurts more than it heals. The modern world sells awakening like a product, a glow up for the soul. You're supposed to feel powerful, clear, high vibe. But what if real awakening doesn't feel like fire, but like fog? Carl Jung described this experience as the Negredo stage of psychological alchemy. It's the blackening, the dissolving of your former self. You don't burn with passion. You dissolve in silence. You don't wake up to new energy. You feel the old energy collapse, and no new one rises to replace it. This isn't laziness. This isn't depression. It's a psychological void. You are not who you were, but you are not yet who you're becoming. And in this void, motivation disappears. Because the fuel that once moved you, external validation, achievement, admiration, no longer works. You know it's fake, but you don't yet know what's real. So you float, half awake, half lost. This is the sacred pause. Part 2. The truth behind. I don't feel like doing anything anymore. Let's say it plainly. You used to have drive. You had goals, plans, deadlines, energy. But now, you wake up with no fire. You look at your to-do list and feel nothing. Even the dreams you once swore you'd die for now seem irrelevant. So what happened? Carl Jung would say, the false self stopped working. And the true self hasn't fully taken over yet. You used to be motivated by ego, the part of you that wanted to impress, compete, win. But when the ego collapses, something deeper emerges. Or rather, it wants to emerge. But it can't do that overnight. So you're in between identities. The actor stepped off the stage, but no new script has been written. And here's where most people panic. Because we've been taught to equate stillness with failure. We think if we're not grinding, striving, posting, building, we're falling behind. But Jung warned, this stillness is not regression. It's rebirth. You are not lazy. You are healing. You are not demotivated. You are deconstructing. You are not failing. You are reconfiguring your entire relationship with meaning. And that takes time. And more than time, it takes courage. Part 3. When you outgrow your old motivation, and nothing new takes its place. Remember the things that used to get you out of bed? The praise, the paycheck, the pressure to prove yourself, the shiny vision board taped above your desk. Now they all feel distant. Not bad, not wrong, just irrelevant. And that scares you. Because if you're not chasing success, validation, or your old identity, then who are you? Jung called this the sacred limbo. A psychic pause, a dissolving of form before the soul reshapes itself. It's like the caterpillar turning to mush inside the cocoon. We romanticize the butterfly, but we forget, before it flies, it liquefies. No wings, no direction, no identity. That's where you are now. And society? It hates this place. The world rewards clarity, speed, progress. But the soul moves differently. The soul is slow, cyclical. It blooms in darkness. It whispers instead of shouts. And here's the paradox. The quieter your inner life becomes, the more alive it starts to feel. Not in a dopamine-saturated way, but in a deep, subtle hum. Not, I must do this. But something is beginning to stir. It's not motivation. It's calling. And calling doesn't rush. It waits. Until you're empty enough to finally hear it. So if you feel lost, adrift, unmotivated, it doesn't mean you're broken. It means you're transitioning from a life built by ego to a life guided by soul. And soul-led living takes longer to build. But it lasts longer. 2. Part 4. The old you is performing. The new you is listening. In the world of ego, action comes first. You do something to feel something. You chase status to feel important. You chase people to feel loved. You chase dreams to feel alive. But it was always a transaction. Your old self was performing. The new self is asking, what if I stop performing and just listen? It's terrifying, isn't it? Because listening doesn't give you quick answers. It gives you silence. And silence forces you to sit with what you've ignored for years. You begin to feel the grief under your ambition, the loneliness beneath your people-pleasing, the fear inside your perfectionism. And when those illusions fall apart, the world feels heavier, not lighter. That's the shock of real awakening. You don't level up. You break open. You start seeing clearly. The job that once made you proud is just a mask. The relationship you built from fear is now a cage. The hustle you worshipped is a trauma response in disguise. This isn't negativity, it's clarity. Carl Jung warned, enlightenment doesn't come from imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. So don't mistake your lack of motivation for failure. It's your soul pulling you away from the life you built in survival mode. Now, it's asking for something different. Not more, not louder, not faster, but truer. And that truth often begins not with fire, but with stillness. Part 5. The void is not empty. It's pregnant. You've probably said it to yourself. I feel nothing. I feel numb. I feel empty. But what if this emptiness isn't a vacuum? What if it's a womb? Carl Jung didn't view stillness as stagnation. He saw it as the chrysalis phase, the necessary dissolution before transformation. It's the goo stage. Yes, goo. The caterpillar doesn't grow wings on top of its old body. It melts into formlessness. It unbecomes before it becomes. So if you feel like you've lost your identity, good. That means the process is working. But here's the hard part. You have to stay in the dark long enough for something real to emerge. No forcing, no rushing, no trying to be productive in a spiritual way. Just stillness, just breath, just presence. You're not meant to figure it out right now. You're meant to feel it out. And that's excruciating for a mind raised in Western culture. We are taught to measure our worth by output. We are told stillness is laziness, rest is weakness, introspection is indulgence. But Jung knew the truth. Your vision will become clear only when you look into your heart. Who looks outside? Dreams. Who looks inside? Awakens. So what do you do in this void? You listen. You walk. You cry. You breathe. You stop chasing clarity and start creating space for it. Because the self, the real self, doesn't emerge through force. It emerges when the ego finally surrenders. And in that surrender, you'll begin to feel a flicker of something new. Not a fire, a spark, small, gentle, honest. And that's enough. Part 6. The spark that returns isn't forceful, it's true. You won't notice it at first. It doesn't arrive like lightning. It doesn't roar into your chest and shout, I'm back. It arrives quietly, almost embarrassingly quietly. A small pull, a subtle interest, a strange moment of presence while making tea, walking your dog, or just watching the light hit the floor a certain way. You don't even know what it is. But something inside you stirs. You don't want to build an empire. You just want to write something honest. Or help someone. Or plant a tree. Or say no and finally mean it. This is not ego-fueled ambition. This is soul-led impulse. Jung called this the beginning of individuation, the movement toward becoming whole. Not becoming successful. Not becoming inspiring. Not becoming spiritual. Just becoming real. This spark doesn't ask for applause. It doesn't care who's watching. It doesn't chase certainty. It chases resonance. And resonance is quieter than motivation, but infinitely more powerful. Because motivation burns out, but resonance sustains. You don't need a morning routine to force this spark into being. You need the courage to trust it when it whispers. This is what Jung meant when he said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. And you can't become that person by effort alone. You become it by listening deeply enough that the truth within you no longer needs to shout. It simply becomes the only thing you can follow. Part 7. You're not here to escape life. You're here to embody truth. The next phase isn't glamorous. You won't go viral for this. You won't glow with spiritual perfection. You won't suddenly feel high vibe 24/7. You'll still have bad days. You'll still feel lost sometimes. But there's a difference now. You stop running, not because you've reached your goal, but because you realize you are the ground you've been chasing. The work isn't outside anymore. It's not about building an identity. It's about shedding everything that isn't yours. And once enough layers fall away, you realize you don't need to chase peace. You only need to stop betraying yourself. You don't need to fake confidence. You only need to stop silencing your truth. You don't need to become someone. You only need to remember who you were before the world told you who to be. This is where your soul begins to speak through your life. Not as poetry, not as abstract ideas, but through your choices. You walk differently. You no longer force conversations that don't feel right. You no longer explain yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. You no longer chase love that requires self-abandonment to maintain. Not because you've become cold, but because you've become clear. This is embodiment, not thinking differently, not even feeling differently, but living differently. Carl Jung warned us, the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. Because once you do, you can't unsee what's false. And you can't unlive your truth. So you begin to build a life, slowly, imperfectly, patiently, that matches the inner landscape you've uncovered. And that life may look quiet on the outside, but inside, it's holy. Part 8. From breakdown to blueprint, how to build from the soul. So what now? You've crossed the threshold. You've sat in the silence. You've let the old fuel burn off. And now, something gentle is beginning to rise. But how do you live from this new place? How do you build a life that isn't based on fear, performance, or illusion? Here's the truth. You don't build it all at once. You build it moment by moment. And not from ambition, but from alignment. Here's what that looks like. You stop asking, what should I do? And start asking, what feels true in my body right now? You stop forcing plans, and start responding to what life brings you, with presence, not panic. You stop proving, and start listening to the subtle yes or no that rises from deep within. And yes, people might not understand you. Because the world loves the hustler, the go-getter, the one who has a 5-year plan and a color-coded schedule. But soul doesn't speak in spreadsheets. It speaks in symbols, in synchronicity, in stillness. You begin to notice signs, not magical omens, but patterns. You meet people who mirror what's been rising inside you. You stumble across ideas at the exact moment you're ready to embody them. This is not magic. This is resonance. And from that resonance, a new life begins to take shape. Not all at once, but steadily. You begin creating, not for likes, but for truth. You begin serving, not for praise, but because your hands can't help it. You begin moving, not from fear of missing out, but from a deep yes within. And slowly, this becomes your new normal. Stillness becomes strategy. Truth becomes traction. Presence becomes productivity, no longer fueled by pressure, but by peace. And this peace is not passive. It moves mountains. Because when your life is aligned, every action becomes a form of prayer. You don't need to shout. You don't need to hustle. You don't need to become anything. You just need to keep listening. And then, answer. Part 9. The quietest life may be the most honest. If you've come this far, through the fog of awakening, through the silence of dismantling, through the slow pulse of something real, you already know the truth. You're not here to shine for the world. You're here to return to yourself. The old world told you to chase success. The deeper world calls you to build something sacred. Maybe that looks like waking up without dread, choosing a relationship where your soul can breathe, saying no, softly but clearly, creating art that no one may ever see, but still matters, taking a walk without your phone, and finally noticing the sky again. These aren't spiritual achievements. They're soul agreements. Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." Not the brand, not the image, Not the story others expect from you, but the being. The one that existed before the world told you how to perform. The one that doesn't chase, but attracts. Doesn't impress, but impacts. Doesn't speak loudly, but lives deeply. This is the soul-led life. It won't always look spectacular, but it will feel true. And in a world that constantly tries to sell you a louder life, that quiet truth is revolutionary. So if your path feels slow, keep walking. If your spark feels faint, keep trusting. If your life feels simple, let it be sacred. You're not behind. You're not broken. You're becoming. And that becoming, however silent, however strange, is the most honest thing you can offer the world. Because when one soul chooses to live aligned, the world doesn't need another guru. It needs that one honest presence. That one person who says, simply, I remember who I am now. And that, more than any advice, any hustle, any badge of success, is the beginning of true healing. If something in this message stirred something in you, even quietly, let it speak. Leave a word in the comments. Not for algorithm, but for connection. Because your story, unfinished, uncertain, imperfect, might be the very light someone else is waiting for. And if you know someone who's lost in that fog, who thinks their lack of motivation means failure, share this with them. Let them know stillness is not a sign of death. It's the breath before rebirth. And if this space, this voice, this message resonates with your journey, subscribe. We go slow here. We go deep. We go inward. Because the greatest path you'll ever walk is the one that leads you back to your own soul. I'll see you there.